Hey everybody, it's Friday Farm Vlog, and today we are going to be talking about prenatal care with our goats because, as you saw last Friday Farm Vlog, Fancy Nancy and Amelia Bedelia are confirmed pregnant using a urine pregnancy test. So check that out if you haven't seen it yet on how we checked for pregnancy with them. But I'm really excited that Fancy Nancy is 90 days pregnant and Amelia Bedelia is 56 days pregnant. So they're both in their second trimester. Goats have 3 trimesters, about 50 days per trimester, for a total of about 145 days for our miniature goats. And I'm so excited that they're gonna have babies April 25th for Fancy Nancy and May 29th for Miss Amelia Bedelia. So right now, Miss Fancy Nancy, her fetus or fetuses should have their ear canals open, their nostrils open, their horn pits should appear, and they could potentially be approximately 10 inches long. So they should be developing quite well at this point. She's only about 10 days away from her 3rd trimester. So we are so excited that it's getting closer. Now with Miss Amelia's being 56 days in, her fetuses or fetus, they should be developing to where their ear canals have just opened. My chicken is laying an egg right now. Before I even bred my 2 female goats, I had the vet come out in October and she made sure that they were a healthy weight, that they looked good. She checked a fecal on them to check for parasites, just to make sure that if there were any parasites we could treat before they get pregnant. We want them to be in optimal health before breeding. She did their rabies vaccine and I gave them their CD&T vaccine, and we talked about a timeline for when it would be good to breed them, especially with Miss Amelia Bedelia, who had her babies that she was still nursing Miss Elizabeth, and so we talked about weaning times and getting pregnant and things of that sort. So really important to plan ahead of time. Now of course, keeping up with basic goat care is important as well, which is making sure you're doing their hoof trims regularly, providing quality hay 24/7 for them, providing free choice minerals, so my girls have access to their goat shed at all times throughout the day. Now I was also keeping track of their heat cycles too. Nigerian dwarfs do come into heat each month throughout the year, and so keeping track of when they go into heat, which is so much easier now that I have bucks on the property, because the bucks are very vocal when our girls are in heat, and the girls flock to the bucks when they're in heat. So it makes it real easy to know when they're in heat, and I can mark it on the calendar and track it from there. So once the pre-breeding checklist was all set, we made our plans for breeding. We took our goats, Fancy Nancy first when she was in heat to get bred, and then a month later we took Miss Amelia. After her weaning process, we took her to get bred. And it's really important after they're bred to make sure for the next 2 to 3 weeks that you keep that stress level really low, because the body is in the process of creating these embryos and it's a really important time. So we keep everything low stress and we don't make any big changes during that time. So Nancy had 4 weeks and then we took Amelia to get bred. And then during that time I just continued feeding the free choice hay, providing their free choice minerals, and then 45 days after breeding we were able to do a pregnancy test. So we waited until Miss Amelia was also far enough along for the test, and the test came back that they were both pregnant. We're so excited about it. Now when it comes to the nutrition of your goat, it's really going to depend on your location and what their needs are. So I spoke to my vet about nutritional needs and took into account where I live in Massachusetts in Bristol County and what our soil is deficient in, and then made a plan for my goat's nutritional needs. It really is helpful to speak to a vet or a local goat breeder who has experience with goats, as well as do your own research as to what your soil is deficient in, and that way you can come up with the best nutritional plan for your goat. So for my goats, they get a dairy pellet. I do the pull and grain dairy pellets during their pregnancy. With Miss Fancy Nancy, I will be increasing her dairy pellet daily ration once she gets into that 3rd trimester, so she can get more as needed as her pregnancy develops, because the fetus or fetuses are going to require nutrition from her. Hey, that's my hair. And so it's really important that we're providing enough nutrition while also not overfeeding them, because overfeeding can make larger kids, which can make it harder for them to give birth to these larger kids. So it's definitely a balance. But they do love their little dairy pellets. Oh, Miss Nancy. Yes. Oh, Miss Amelia. And then I do give them a little bit of alfalfa pellets and sunflower seeds. They really enjoy that. Currently they are getting Timothy hay. I am going to add in an option of some alfalfa hay so that Miss Fancy Nancy in that 3rd trimester will have access to some alfalfa hay as well. Now, I talked about soil deficiencies. So every location is going to be different when it comes to what minerals your goats are going to need, because it's going to depend on what minerals they have access to. So providing free choice goat minerals is a great way to make sure that your goat is able to access minerals and take what they need daily. However, that's not always enough if you live in an area where your soil is deficient on a particular mineral. So my vet recommended that I give my goats additional selenium because of the deficiencies here in Massachusetts. So I go to Tractor Supply, I pick up selenium paste. This is actually the DuraVet Selenium and Vitamin E gel, and I squirt it into my goat's mouth. Now, this may not be necessary in your area, and different doses may be necessary just depending on your... Oh my gosh, I was able to... This chicken. So I'm just gonna give this to Fancy Nancy and Amelia Bedelia quick. So the doses are listed on the side, the directions are on here, and I'm going off of what the vet recommended. And then I just turn this plastic ring to the dose that I am going to give my goat, so that when I press this in, it only goes to that ring, so that I know they're only getting that small amount. Let's see who's going to go first. See if we can get a volunteer. Miss Amelia. Oh. Good girl, you ready? Good girl, that was it. Thank you. Smells good to me. You want a little more? You want to lick the spoon? Alright, so now that she got hers, I'm going to move this plastic ring to Nancy's dose. Miss Nancy, your turn. Miss Nancy. You smell it, huh? Yeah, you smell it. So what is that? She won't take it, so I'm going to have to get her on the milk stand just to make it easier for me to give it. There you go. Alright, Miss Fancy Nancy was a little more difficult than Miss Amelia, but they both now have their selenium on board. Now that's something I'm going to continue to do for them to support them in their pregnancy and after their pregnancy. because when they're milking as well, they need to make sure they're getting the minerals that they need. Now, I did talk about copper deficiencies. We do have a lower level of copper in our soil here in Massachusetts, and so I do give copper boluses to my goats. They have already had their copper bolus, so they are all set with that currently. So definitely something to make sure that your goats are getting the minerals that they need. Now, I'm preparing for that third trimester for Miss Fancy Nancy coming up really soon. She is not nursing because she was not bred this past year. So she has been dried off for quite a while now. Now, had she still been in milk, I would have made sure before she goes into that third trimester that I was drying her off, because that third trimester, they need to put all their energy into the development of the fetuses, and so you don't want them to be putting their energy into making milk. You want all that energy to go into the developing fetuses. I'm going to be keeping a close eye on her weight, as well as Miss Amelia Bedelia, because I want to make sure that they're not underweight, overweight. We want them to be just right, and I can adjust their grain accordingly. No drastic changes though, but just little adjustments as needed. Miss Amelia here is the bigger goat of the two, but she's always been a little bit bigger, but she's also looking good. But it's always good to take a feel of your goat, make sure that their spine's not prominent, that their ribs can be found, but they're not protruding. You're just right. And then in the last month before they kid, I will update their CD&T vaccine, because I want to make sure that their fetuses do get the antibodies from the CD&T vaccine before they're born. So I've done that before with each of their pregnancies. It's worked out well for them and their babies, so they will get that in that last month before they have their babies. And I do like to get their hooves trimmed about a month before kidding. That way it's done and I don't have to stress them out close to their due date. Try to keep the stress to a minimum in those last couple weeks. And the week before those babies come is always an exciting time, getting their little kidding stall ready, making sure that the kidding kit is stocked. I have a video on stocking the kidding kit with all the essential supplies for when your goat goes into labor. And with my goats, I just have the three girls. When they were kidding in the past, it was just Fancy Nancy and Amelia Bedelia together, so I didn't separate prior to kidding. Once they had the kids, I do put the mama and baby in their own little separate area and slowly reintroduce them to each other, because they don't like to be separated. They are twin sisters and they have each other. This time around, Miss Amelia has her baby, Miss Elizabeth, here. So I don't think she'll be as stressed when I take Nancy into the little kidding stall, which is going to be in this shed, so they're still going to be able to see each other, which is good. But at least now she's got her daughter with her, so it won't be so upsetting for her to sleep separate from Fancy Nancy when the kids are on the ground. And then when I introduce Miss Amelia to Fancy Nancy's kids is completely going to be a slow process, and totally depending on how Miss Amelia and Miss Elizabeth get along with the babies, because we got to keep the babies safe. And then with that due date, it really can vary on when they have those kids. It could be early, could be late, and so it's always an exciting time during that time, watching the doe closely, watching for signs of labor. I made a video about what to look for, so you can check out that video. And then of course the best part, when the babies come into this world. If you want to see Miss Fancy Nancy's first kidding, I have a video of that. And if you want to see Miss Amelia Bedelia's first kidding, I have a video of that as well. But I'm happy to say both girls are doing great so far with their pregnancies. And we'll be keeping a close eye to see how they continue to do and support them as best as we can. I do keep the selenium in the house because I don't want it freezing out here. I like to keep it at room temperature. So that's gonna come on inside with me. I'm gonna bring you along inside. I wanna show you the incubators because I candled the eggs and I wanna share with you the results of these 72 eggs in my 3 incubators and how many have embryos developing in there. It is 32 degrees out right now. Pond is frozen. The wind is quite windy today. I didn't have high expectations for the eggs that I put in the incubators just because of how freezing cold it's been, and that can be hard on eggs. But let's go in, I'll show you what we got. It's much warmer in here. That Carhartt jacket, these Carhartt overalls keep me nice and warm outside, but definitely don't need them in the house. Okay, let's go see the eggs in the basement. Okay, I have my 3 incubators here that I put 24 eggs in each incubator for a total of 72 eggs, and they have 13 days to go before they hatch. Now I candled them a week into their incubation process, and I wanted to see how many of these eggs would develop. Because again, the cold is definitely detrimental to eggs, and so I wasn't expecting too many eggs to actually develop embryos. So let's talk about the numbers where we're at now. This first incubator is the incubator that I put the eggs that I found outside in the goat shed and chick coop that I didn't know were there. There was nests from each one, and they had been outside for an unknown amount of time through freezing cold nights, and I didn't expect them to develop. But to my surprise, 16 of these eggs out of 24 have embryos developing in them. I was shocked because normally with eggs that you don't know when they were laid and they've been through the freezing cold, they're dirty, they're not good hatching eggs, right? So you would toss those out. But 16 of them, if I had just tossed out those eggs, yes, I tossed out the ones that actually had cracks from being out in the cold, which was quite a few of them. But the ones that I put in here, 8 of them didn't have development, but these 16 did. I don't know how many chicks will actually come to full term and hatch and survive, but it's worth it if we get some chicks out of these eggs that would have normally gotten thrown away. Now my second incubator, I selected the nicest, largest eggs that I had available on my countertop, the eggs that I had been gathering. This incubator has 12 eggs with embryos developing. However, 12 eggs did not have any development that I could see on candling. So only half. Now in the third incubator, I took eggs that I had been gathering over the last few days, and the larger, nicer looking ones went in here. The smaller, dirtier eggs went in here. So I figured, you know, not the most ideal hatching eggs, so there wouldn't be as many embryos developing. This one turned out to be the best one. So with this one, I have 19 eggs with embryos developing in them out of 24 eggs, and I removed 5 eggs that did not have development. So in total, out of 72 eggs, we have 47 embryos developing. Now again, I don't expect to hatch 47 chicks with 47 embryos developing, but in approximately 13 or 14 days, we'll see how long it takes them to hatch, if they're gonna hatch a day early or a day late or somewhere in there. We'll see. But I am curious because hatching in winter is different from hatching in other seasons, just because the eggs are exposed to harsher elements prior to going into the incubator, which is the reason I don't ship hatching eggs in winter, because they can be compromised from the cold freezing temperatures. But I love doing these egg experiments. I love candling the eggs. I have a whole video on how to candle eggs. I use my little Nest Echo flashlight and look for a little black developing embryo. I look for red veining. I look for movement. You don't always see movement. That doesn't mean that the embryo is not okay. Sometimes the embryo is sleeping or not active at the time. Now, the scientist in me loves data, loves researching, loves learning as much as I can. There's 25 eggs that I removed, and I want to crack them open and see. So I'm gonna go crack some eggs. All right, I got the eggs from incubator number 1, 2, and 3. Sadly, I can't get a good look at the white spot on the eggs that you can normally see on a fresh cracked egg. They've been in the incubator for over a week now, and while most of the yolks are intact, I'm not seeing that white germ spot on the egg, so I can't tell if there's a bullseye to tell me if it's fertilized. So while I do think most of these are fertilized eggs, because when I cook with these eggs and I open them up, almost every single egg has a bullseye indicating it's fertilized. So I really believe that most of these eggs are fertilized eggs that did not develop because the temperatures were below 46 degrees and they were left outside in that cold weather. And temperatures below 46 degrees is known to cause a high rate of embryonic death, unfortunately. And now I know for myself, hatching in winter, there's going to be a high embryonic death rate, and I have to take that into account when I'm looking to hatch chicks, and also to wait on shipping hatching eggs until the weather actually warms up above 46 degrees for shipping those out. So this was a really good learning experiment. So thank you for hanging out with me today on Friday Farm Vlog, and check out those other videos that we talked about if you're interested in goat kidding or goat kidding kits or candling eggs. So many awesome videos that I've created in the past that I think you would enjoy. And if you liked this video, hitting that like button down below really helps this channel out, and hitting that subscribe button if you want to see more videos like these. And as always, if you haven't started your farm yet, what are you waiting for? Get your farm on.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Do you want a farm? A wicked awesome farm? Watch this channel to learn what to do. We love to farm and we'll show you. Yeah.